Hey y'all, it's me, Rad, or could I say Rockin' Rad, because I'm dressed as Robin from Stranger Things Season 5, which is what I'm here to talk about today. As we all know, Stranger Things has been a huge show for many years now. I've watched it since the beginning, so that means it's been a part of my life for about 10 years. It's just such a great show all around, and there's so many things happening in this new season, and I figured, why not make a video and talk about it? So that is what I'm here to do. And this will be the first time I am making a video like this, like a little discussion video about a show. So please bear with me. I even wrote out a script to try to make sure I touch on everything that happened. So if you see me looking down, full disclosure, that's why. I'm in the process of trying to figure out, how to do these videos, the best setup to have, and this is where I'm at today, so let's go for it. And if you're a fan of Stranger Things, I hope you stick along and enjoy. Let's get into it. We're going to start with Chapter 1 of Season 5, which is The Crawl. Well, we start off, it's November 12th, 1983, which is 6 days after Will originally went missing. So we see, the younger Will in the Upside Down running from a Demogorgon, and he inevitably winds up, being caught by Vecna, of course. And Vecna's being just a total creep, as he always is. And he has Will attached to like this creepy tree area, and like some sort of branch attaches to Will's mouth and is filling him up with this like upside down juice. I don't know what else to call it, but it's gross. And I think it's safe to say that obviously though, Will being full of this nasty stuff from the Upside Down is what really helps create that link between him and Vecna. Now we flash forward to November 3rd of 1987 at the Wheeler household. We see Holly Wheeler, who is Mike and Nancy's younger sister, at the window waving to some like shadowy figure outside, but we don't know who this figure is. We then realize that the Byers family has in fact been living in the Wheeler house this whole time since the ending of Season 4. Now, the end of Season 4, if you don't remember, ended with a giant earthquake that literally split apart Hawkins. Now, since then, it has been in the story a year and a half. So it's been a 1.5 year time jump from Season 4 to Season 5, which is actually the longest time skip in Stranger Things history. Yeah, of course, this time skip wasn't originally planned, but, it happened due to unforeseen circumstances. Now, we learn that Hawkins has apparently been in a really strict quarantine since then. So after the big earthquake, they locked down Hawkins and no one was allowed to leave. So as the kids start leaving now for school, everyone starts tuning in to WSQK The Squawk with their host, Rockin' Robin. And of course we see our boy Steve Harrington, because he's working there with his buddies. Since the Scoops troupe always takes jobs together, they do not work alone. And apparently this is Robin's 500th broadcast. We learn from her that that big crack in Hawkins caused from the earthquake was actually covered up with just like a metal band-aid, and kids use it to sled down and stuff, which of course doesn't make the military happy, who now has a base in Hawkins and has been enforcing all of the strict quarantine protocols, like getting tested and everything, since, everyone was breathing in that stuff that happened from the earthquake. They were breathing in the upside down particles, So the military is kind of running tests on everyone and seeing what happens, and yet again, not letting anyone leave Hawkins. As Robin starts to dedicate a song to her special little date she has tonight, the broadcast is actually interrupted by some static and other things, messing up the broadcast. So her and Steve go to try to fix that. Now we flash over to Hawkins High School and we see that the basketball team is bullying our sweet boy Dustin. He's wearing a Hellfire Club shirt in Eddie's memory, and of course the basketball team doesn't like that because they're stupid and think that Eddie was evil, so they're like trying to, push Dustin around, and one of them rips, Dustin's Hellfire Club shirt, and it's just crazy. Now, I'd like to point out that a lot of people online have been talking about how Dustin has a bad attitude, or how he's changed and isn't the same Dustin. Well, like, he's literally grieving a person who he viewed as like an older brother figure / mentor. He had to watch him, right in front of him in a really brutal way. So, like, of course he has this immense amount of grief and trauma. And whilst also, let's not forget, he is a teenage boy going through puberty. So, truly, the way that Dustin is behaving throughout Volume 1 is, not only completely valid, but also understandable. And I think some people that are like upset about the way Dustin is behaving, like either one, just don't remember what it was like to be a teenager, and or two, they've just been lucky enough to never experience immense grief before, so they just don't understand why he's behaving that way. But anyway, sidebar over. Okay, so we cut over now to see Elle, who's training in this like crazy obstacle course that clearly like Hopper and her have built, and like they've been working on that while keeping her hidden because, of course, the military is searching for Elle, unsurprisingly. But this obstacle course she's going through is like super crazy. She's doing all these jumps and like blasting mannequins with her powers, and I guess she gets through in 12 minutes and 33 seconds, which she says is 4 seconds too slow. So clearly there is a time she's trying to beat of 12 minutes and 30 seconds. It's really cool to see her training and like see how far she's come with her powers since season 1. Like she's been really harnessing them in and using them to do new things like jumping far and all this stuff. And it's just like really, really awesome. Now we go back to the radio station where Steve and Jonathan now are competing to impress Nancy, of course. And so they are actually like racing up to the top of the like big tall radio tower to fix something, because that's apparently why the broadcast was interrupted, that like something at the top of the tower got loose. So the boys rush up there to try to fix it, you know, to impress him. But as they're at the top of the tower, Murray actually shows up. Now, apparently, Murray's been delivering the, you know, squad supplies. He's been disguising himself as a delivery driver to help sneak things in and out. He's been smuggling stuff for them since, you know, no one in Hawkins is supposed to leave. So Murray hands Jonathan this little tape, and he tells him that he thinks he'd find the tape engaging, which is, you know, an interesting choice of words. Perhaps this is a little hint of something to happen. Wink, wink, you know. And after everything's fixed, Robin gets back on air, and now she has this new information that she learned from Murray. So Murray gives, you know, them information about when the military is doing their runs, and that's how the squad has been getting the information to be able to do their crawls. So apparently the military and everything are moving earlier than they normally would be, and the crawl is going to be tonight, which is sooner than the squad was expecting it to be. Now, when Robin's on air, she has a little thing that she says. She says she has a special treat that is sure to turn your day upside down. So the squad that's listening knows this is, you know, the code to know that the secret code is about to be revealed that will give them information about tonight's crawl. The information that they write down from it is North G1, 10 p.m., 2 hours. So it's clear that they've created this system to have in place so whenever Robin gets the information from Murray about, you know, these crawls, she could give it to the gang over the air without anyone else listening being able to understand what they're talking about. Now, of course, everyone starts planning for the crawl, and as like Steve, Nancy, and Jonathan are all talking to each other, you know, Steve says, you know, he points out that they've still not found Vecna or any sign of him, and that Will hasn't had his goosies in a very long time. But just as he's saying that about Will, we pan over to, you know, the kids at school, you know, Mike and Lucas and Will and Dustin planning out tonight's crawl. And Will, all of a sudden, like, it's overcome with dizziness, and he's looking up at the sky and sees everything spinning and hears kids laughing, and he gets really dizzy. And now cut over to Holly's school, where she is laying down on the merry-go-round looking up at the sky and getting really dizzy because this bully kid named Derek keeps spinning her faster and faster. See a little connection there, maybe? Well, next we see that the military has their base set up, and they are researching like creatures and things they've found in the Upside Down, like slicing them open and stuff, and of course still searching for Elle with no luck. Now, I can't help but point out the doctor in this scene as she's like slicing open this creature, and it's all bloody and stuff, and she takes down her mask to like talk to the soldier, takes down the mask with her dirty gloves, places it on her dirty neck, then after she's done talking, retakes that mask and with the dirty gloves and puts it back onto her mouth. Like, bruh, that's so gross. Like, yikes, I thought you're supposed to be a doctor. Maybe you should be smarter than that. But anyway, speaking of Elle, you know, she wants to go with Hopper to help him out on the crawl, but he won't let her come because he really just wants to keep her safe. Now, this is why apparently she wanted to beat that 12-minute, 30-second time frame because I guess he said that if she would beat it, she would be able to come. However, as she's asking him what her time was for the second run she did through the obstacle course, he just won't tell her and tells her that she can't come. Now, he does reveal to Joyce in private that Elle actually did beat the 12-minute 30-second time. However, since so far on these crawls, they've not seen anything important, and, it's really just been like recon missions. He doesn't think it's worth putting Elle at risk yet because the military is still looking for her, and he doesn't want to risk her getting caught for just, a simple recon mission. There's not been any sign of Vecna, so it shouldn't even be a big deal. Now, back at Hawkins High, our boy Dustin decides to prank that guy Andy from the basketball team. Andy's the one who had ripped the Hellfire Club shirt earlier. Now, Dustin decides to put a corn snake in Andy's locker and leaves a little Hellfire Lives message, which, bro, you pretty much could have just signed your name at that point. Obviously, everyone knows it was you. Now, yes, obviously, this probably isn't the best idea because the basketball team is full of strong, jocks who are violent, and Dustin is just, a cute little nerd. But, Andy, totally deserves it, and he sucks, so I understand why Dustin did it, to be frank. Not a good idea, but he's a teenage boy, and, it's all for Eddie. It's all for Eddie. They just keep, talking stuff on Eddie, and Dustin doesn't like it, so of course he's going to lash out at them. Duh. Now, anyway, Mike goes to go pick up Holly at her school. But Holly is not outside where she usually is, I assume. So Mike finally goes inside to see that Holly's actually waiting because their mom Karen had come in to talk to Holly's teacher. It all has to do with Holly's, imaginary friend she's been talking to, Mr. Whatsit. Now, apparently, she tells Mike that Mr. Whatsit has been saying, there are monsters here in Hawkins, but I can protect you from those monsters. So clearly, Holly's really afraid. And Mike assures Holly, though, that there is, no reason to be afraid, that everything's going to be okay. And he gives Holly this cute little, D&D painted figurine, and he tells her, this is Holly the Heroic. And it's a really sweet moment that shows what a good big brother Mike is. The fact he had been carrying around that little figure, and he did say he was going to wait to give it to her until later. But, it's just so cute that this little, nerd boy had it ready for his sister, and, it's sweet. I think that it's really nice to get to see their sibling relationship, as it's something we haven't really gotten to see much, as Holly's character hasn't really been prominent in the series so far. So I think it's, interesting to get to see their dynamic together. Now we go over to Lucas and Will, who are visiting Max at the hospital. So she's still been in that coma state this whole time. So it's been about 1.5 years of her just being stuck in this coma after, the whole Vecna curse thing. Robin is also at the hospital, but she is visiting her little secret girlfriend, Vicky, who is a candy striper at the hospital. And so her and Vicky are off talking, and starting to maybe kiss a little, and Will is going to go get a Coke, and as he's going back, he actually sees Robin and Vicky and kind of freaks out and drops the Coke and makes a, super not low-key getaway. Now, Dustin, meanwhile, is at the cemetery visiting our boy Eddie's grave, which makes me so sad. I can't even think about it too much. It makes me want to cry. And Dustin had brought a can of paint thinner with him because it's been a common occurrence, apparently, that people have been defiling Eddie's grave. But as he goes to wipe it off, he realizes that this time it is not paint, it's blood. And he realizes it is blood from the corn snake that he had pranked Andy with earlier. And of course, that means Andy and his little goon basketball friends are with him. So, Andy and his 3 jock friends show up to beat up Dustin. Now, Dustin actually puts up a pretty good fight and splashes paint thinner in their eyes and everything. But of course, he can only do so much when it's literally 4 jocks against him. So, they do inevitably end up knocking him out, which, gosh, when I say I was screaming at my TV at this scene, it made me so mad. These jocks are just the worst. And what little babies. They all have to gang up on Dustin, 4 against 1, as if that's a fair fight. But whatever. I know it's just a show, but it still makes me super angry. Now, the rest of the crew is starting to meet up and get ready for the crawl tonight, and Mike and Elle get to see each other and have a sweet little moment together. Now, everyone notices that, Dustin is late, and they seem a little bit concerned, but honestly, the main vibe that people are giving is just like annoyed, and in my opinion, that's kind of upsetting, because just with everything that has happened and with everything they know Dustin's going through, I just feel like they should have been a little bit more concerned and not so just like annoyed at him, but teach their own. Now, we learned that Steve's job during these, crawls is that he drives a WSQK van that has a satellite affixed to the top that Dustin installed because he's so smart. And normally it's Dustin's job to kind of man it, and that is how they track Hopper while he's in the Upside Down so he doesn't get lost. But now, of course, since Dustin isn't there, they need someone else to man the satellite while Steve drives, and Will totally volunteers and says he knows how to do it, but Joyce is like, I don't want you going anywhere because she's being a little bit overprotective of him, which is not surprising. And so Jonathan goes instead, which, is a great idea because Steve and Jonathan get along so well. Now, back at the Wheeler household, Holly is hearing her parents, fighting each other. And her mom's like yelling at the dad saying like, you don't even know what age our daughter is. You don't even know what age Holly is. Which is like, okay, wait though. Do any of us really know her age though? Now, this is probably one of my biggest gripes, I guess, with this season, because it's like, what age is Holly even really supposed to be? If we're going with the timeline, technically she should be around 7, but because of everything that had to switch around, I guess they're trying to make her like 9 now instead is what I've read. However, the actress playing her is 14, so she still even looks older than 9, and it's just like the way they're trying to like dress her and make her behave, they're like trying to make it seem like she's younger, and it just, it is a little odd. Now, that's no shade to the actress at all. She is super cute and does a really good job. Just sometimes these weird kind of inconsistencies happen in shows, especially when, there has to be time jumps that weren't planned thanks to something, say unexpected, like a global pandemic maybe that sort of messed up the shooting of the show. I do think that it's pretty funny that the Duffer Brothers seem to be like just calling this fact out in this scene, by having Karen talk about what age Holly's supposed to be. It's like they already knew people were going to bring it up when the show came out, so they just brought it up first, which, kudos to the Duffer Brothers, because I think that's the kind of smartest way to deal with a situation like this. Drawing attention to it a little bit to be like, hey, we understand this, but now let's move on from it. So, from here on out, we'll just believe that Holly's 9, I guess. Sure. So, in the Upside Down, Hop has successfully infiltrated and is in one of the military vans. However, all of a sudden, stuff starts happening and there's a disruption on the route, and the vans are attacked by, you guess it, Demogorgons. Now, Will is actually seeing through the eyes of the Demogorgon, so he's able to like warn everyone, and he tells Nancy that he thinks that the Demogorgon is about to go head over to their house. And at the Wheeler house, Karen is drunk, listening to music, getting ready for a bath, and the dad is outside hitting golf balls. So, Holly is over in her room just crying, and they don't hear her, as she starts screaming when a Demogorgon bursts through her ceiling. So she's screaming, and of course, nobody hears her. And that is the end of chapter 1. Of course, yeah, you gotta just love the classic 80s nonchalant parenting. I don't know how they're not hearing her as she is screaming bloody murder. But I do think that this was a great jump back into the Stranger Things universe. I think that they were able to smoothly recap what happened during the time skip and also let us see what all of our beloved characters have been currently up to, and, just give us a good amount of a little bit of thrill and suspense as well as we're just hopping back in and getting started on this season. Now let's get into chapter 2, which is the vanishing of Holly Wheeler. I guess you could guess what happens in this episode. So, we start this episode with a Demogorgon, bursting into Holly's room, and since no one's coming to help Holly, she runs out of her room to go find one of her parents. So she goes into her mom's room and is telling her, what's happening, and Karen can now hear the Demogorgon crashing through the house. So she grabs Holly and they actually hide under the bubbles, like in the water of the bathtub, which is a pretty good idea. Now, they do seem like they're holding their breath for a very long time in this scene, which, like, good on them, because personally I know that my crappy little asthmatic lungs would have given out much sooner and the Demogorgon would have totally found me. But you know, they're able to hold their breath for a very long time, and just as we think they might, you know, be found, the dad actually makes himself useful for once and comes into the house and distracts the Demogorgon, so it goes to him instead. To the dad's credit, he does try to fight off the Demogorgon, but of course, you know, the Demo wins and hits him away. He did buy, you know, Holly and Karen enough time to run downstairs. However, of course, the Demogorgon does find them downstairs and stops them from leaving the house. And Karen, to her credit, like, big props to drunk Karen, because her, you know, wine drunk ass takes out a wine bottle and like breaks it and is about to, you know, fight the Demogorgon with a wine bottle. And she actually does like a pretty solid job. Like, she is a total baddie in this scene. Like, kudos to her. But of course, you know, Demogorgon versus wine bottle, like, there's only one way that's going to go. So Nancy and Elle are rushing to the house, and they do arrive, but unfortunately, they are too late, and Nancy finds her mom super badly injured out on the kitchen floor, just like covered in blood. And we see that Holly was actually taken into the Upside Down by the Demogorgon. Now, Elle is able to jump through the little gate that the Demo had made. She jumps through just in time, right as it closes, so she'll be able to go through the Upside Down and try to hopefully track down Holly. Now, the Wheeler parents are rushed to the hospital, of course, and Mike and Nancy aren't allowed to go see them, and poor Nancy is like in the bathroom washing off all the blood from her hands from her mom, and as if this poor girl has not been traumatized enough. And she's thinking back to everything that Vecna told her and like kind of warned her about, saying that he was going to get her family, and now it's coming into fruition. And so Nancy goes out to Lucas and Mike and is telling them that, you know, she thinks Vecna is punishing them, and that's why he took Holly. However, Lucas points out that he doesn't think it's like quite that simple. You know, Vecna's the type that doesn't leave anything unfinished. And he points out that Holly was taken 3 days before the anniversary of when Will was taken. And this just cannot be a simple coincidence. So, you know, they're thinking it has to be a bigger picture somehow. So the military arrives at the crime scene, that is the Wheeler household, and they immediately think that Elle might have been there. Now, of course, Nancy tells them, no, of course, you know, I was here alone, but they're still looking around. Luckily, though, Elle did go through that little gate, the little portal into the Upside Down, so she's not in the house, so they're not going to find her because she's down, you know, in the Upside Down looking for Holly, of course. Now, back at the radio station, Will is explaining his visions, saying, you know, that they've gotten a lot more intense than they were before. He says it felt like he literally was the Demogorgon. He was seeing what it was seeing, feeling what it was feeling, and the whole thing sort of just felt like a dream. Will claims that he's felt permanently changed since, you know, he was taken all those years ago, and that feeling had kind of subsided when they were in California, but it returned right when they got back to Hawkins. Now, Robin smartly points out that she thinks Will is like some sort of antenna, and Will's connection to, you know, the Upside Down and Vecna gets stronger the closer he is to Vecna. Now, this, in my opinion, is just another example of how Robin is a super useful character who's really helpful and helps figure things out. I've seen some people online saying that Robin is just kind of useless and annoying, but that really irks me because she's totally smart and has actually helped the group multiple times. Recall her helping decode the Russian message, you know, in season 3, for example, being super useful and smart then, but, you know, if you don't believe she's smart, then I don't know if you're very smart. Anyway, Steve and Jonathan are getting a jump on the van from some girl who's passing by. Now, apparently, this girl is the sister of a girl that Steve might have stood up a few times on some dates. But, you know, he's still trying to be nice, but she's not being friendly, even when he so nicely offers to, you know, give her a bopper. Now, those are his beloved sweet treat. Side note, in this season, we learn of Steve's love for boppers. Boppers were a snack by Nature Valley in the 80s. These bars had a smooth, soft peanut butter core and were covered in a crunchy layer like chocolate chips or cereal pieces. There were like a couple different flavors. Unfortunately, boppers were discontinued around 1989, and honestly, They sound super delicious, so I'm kind of super sad they're not around anymore. Nature Valley actually did do a little limited re-release of them, you know, because of Stranger Things. However, it was like super limited, and I'm big sad because I missed the drop and wasn't able to get a box, so. Apparently, they are going to release the recipe so you can make them at home, which I guess I'll have to do that when they do it, but still bummed I didn't get to try like the actual one. But anyway, Bopper side note over. So while they are trying to get the van started again, Steve and Jonathan are, you know, inside the van arguing because clearly Jonathan is really jealous of Steve. I mean, could you blame him? It's Steve Harrington. Like, who's not jealous of Steve Harrington? Now, the van eventually does get started, and then Dustin shows up right at the van, and the boy is looking rough, like really rough. Now, back in the Upside Down, Elle finds Hop, and of course, he's surprised to see her there, and she tells him what happened and explains how she's tracking the Demogorgon because she thinks it's going to lead her to Holly. She tells Hop that she's trusting her instinct. And honestly, in this scene, I was kind of like wanting to yell at Hop, like, yeah, dude, trust her. She kind of knows more than anyone would about the Upside Down, about everything. So maybe just have a little bit more faith in her. Now, in the Right Side Up, at the hospital, Lucas is visiting Max, you know, and talking to her. And of course, playing, you know, running up that hill, trying to help her out. And he's pretty much begging Max to resurrect her, you know, at least give him a sign that she can still hear him. And in this scene, my heart breaks for Lucas because imagine how hard it is. This is someone he cares about, someone he loves, who's been stuck in this comatose state for like a year and a half. So I just feel so bad for him, and it must be so hard to not give up hope. Also at the hospital, Mike and Nancy are in the waiting room talking about Holly's friend, Mr. Whatsit. And they're starting to wonder if maybe he could be real somehow. I mean, after all, what are the odds that Holly was just saying she's afraid of being taken by a monster and then is taken by a monster? It seems like that's too big of a coincidence, of course. Now back at the van, Steve is, you know, telling Dustin about everything that happened during this crawl, how things went wrong, because, you know, obviously Dustin missed it since he was away. And Dustin is claiming he missed it because he fell off his bike. But clearly, you know, Steve can tell he's lying because Dustin very clearly looks like he was totally beat up. Now, this is when we really start to see how much, you know, Dustin and Steve's dynamic has changed this season. It really is, like, heartbreaking to see them struggling with everything. But, you know, Dustin's going through so much, and it makes, you know, sense that he'd be, like, acting out or kind of, like, pulling away from, you know, someone like, you know, Steve, who is a big brother / mentor figure, just like Eddie was. So, of course, after losing Eddie, Dustin's just going through it mentally, and if, like, that's going to change their dynamic and make things a little bit tricky. Now, back at the radio station, Joyce, Robin, and Will are trying to come up with a plan. Joyce's plan, like, honestly pretty much sucks because all she's focusing on is keeping Will safe, which I know makes sense, that's her son, but still, her plan is bad. So Robin makes up a little, you know, thing about the flux capacitor being broken, and she's saying that's jamming the signal. So they need to go fix that flux capacitor if they want to be able to, you know, get back in touch with Hopper in the Upside Down. Joyce doesn't catch this, but clearly if, you know, anyone watching, you know, if you've seen Back to the Future, you know, the flux capacitor is a part of the DeLorean that has nothing to do with a radio station. So it's just, you know, Robin's excuse to get Will out of there so they could do his plan, which is use, you know, his antenna to hopefully go maybe find something, see if the connection gets stronger if they get closer to where he had his vision earlier. Now, back in the Upside Down, Elle and Hop are tracking the demo, but they kind of stop because, you know, Hopper is wounded from that attack earlier, and so Elle goes to help him with that. And they have this really sweet moment together where they both admit they can, you know, tend to be stubborn punk asses, and they're more alike in that way than they'd like to admit sometimes. And, you know, Hop explains that he's just, you know, overprotective because of what had happened with his daughter, Sarah. You know, Sarah was a strong girl, and, you know, he lost her. And no matter how strong a person is, you know, things can change at any moment. Hop says, we can't count on anything in this life, which that line really stuck out to me because as someone who has lost people unexpectedly, it's very true. Like, you never know what's going to happen. So, of course, you know, he's going to be really protective over Elle. And I really enjoyed getting to see this, like, soft, sweet moment between Elle and Hop because it's a reminder of this, like, beautiful bond they've created and how much they really, really do love each other. So it's super sweet. Now, back at the hospital, we have the classic, cigarette smoking, condescending, sexist doctor who's telling Nancy and Mike, that they can't see their mom because it is too risky. But Nancy, being the baddie she is not going to accept this answer. And she says that she has an idea, and she has this like totally iconic line where she says, "I don't trust doctors who smoke," or "call me sweetheart," which I'm like, yes, period, yes, queen, work, we love that. So her and Mike get headed to do whatever plan it is that she's come up with. Now, back at the van, Jonathan, Steve, and Dustin are still searching for that signal from Hop, but just can't seem to find anything. And now Will and Robin are entering the forest area to see if Will feels anything, from that little signal. And as they're walking, Robin brings up, like what had happened earlier at the hospital, trying to tell Will, like, oh, like that's not what you think it was. Like it's nothing, but Will's claiming like, oh, I didn't see anything. But before they could get too into it, Robin points out the painted rock mandala, and she brings up, oh, like I remember making that when we were little kids. And then Will, remembers hearing kids laughing earlier when he had that vision, and all of these pieces start connecting together for them. Meanwhile, in the Upside Down, Hop and Elle come across this absolutely massive wall. It's like organic matter, sort of looks meaty. It's really gross, classic Upside Down stuff, and it's huge. And Elle finds one of Holly's shoes right outside the wall. So she's like, okay, clearly the Demogorgon took Holly through this wall, and that's why I can't see her anymore. That's why I can't hear her. I can't hear what's on the other side of this wall. So she wants to get to the other side. So her and Hop try to find a way to get through this wall. Back at the hospital, Mike and Nancy are now in disguises. Nancy disguised herself as a candy striper, and Mike is disguised as a patient, and they're walking through the halls, and luckily their disguises were successful and they're able to make it into their mom's room. Now they ask Karen to write down some answers to the questions they have about Holly and Mr. Whatsit. Karen can't really talk because, the Demogorgon, with her vocal cords, so writing is a safer bet. At this point, we start flashing back and forth between the hospital scene with the Wheelers and Will and Robin, who are now at the playground of Holly's school. Will realizes that he was seeing through Holly's eyes earlier who was Vecna's victim. So really, he was seeing through Vecna's eyes, looking through, his latest victim's eyes. So there's that link there. Now, Karen is revealing to Mike and Nancy at the hospital that Mr. Whatsit's real name is Henry. So now they're realizing, oh gosh, this is real, this is bad. And okay, look, I personally felt like, most of us watching probably saw that reveal coming, right? I thought it was pretty obvious right away that it was Henry. Comment and let me know if you think it was super obvious or if this was surprising to you with this reveal. I'm very curious to know. But obviously it's surprising to the characters in the show, and this is a big revelation for them to all have. Now we see Henry / Vecna, in the Upside Down with Holly. However, where they're at in the Upside Down doesn't look like it is the Upside Down. It's all bright and nice looking. And Henry is telling Holly that, he is going to keep her safe from the monsters, and he's going to go protect her friends and eventually protect her family too. And as they're sitting there, we pan out and see that they are inside of the Creel house, but it looks like it used to back in the day. So everything's really uncanny. And then cue Enter Sandman start playing, which really was, I feel the perfect song to, encapsulate the vibe. All right, so that is what happens in chapters 1 and 2 of volume 1 of season 5. Now, so much happens with these first 2 episodes. And I am very happy that we didn't lose any big characters yet. I know that the Wheeler parents got pretty close, but, luckily they were able to make it to the hospital and get the help they needed, so they'll be fine. I do think it's interesting the way that everything, in these first 2 episodes is woven together, the way they clip between each scene. In my opinion, the episodes feel so much shorter than they actually are because it's all so interesting and just does a good job hopping around from every group so we know everything that's happening simultaneously. The actors also in the show are just so crazy talented. Gaten, of course, who plays Dustin, does an incredible job, portraying all of the complex emotional turmoil that Dustin is going through. And of course, Joe Keery always brings just an overall great presence to the show. Steve just has the absolute best mom energy, and personally, I'll never get over Steve's character growth from season 1 to this season. I think it's like the best out of pretty much all the characters. I could literally write a whole essay about why Steve Harrington is amazing. Maybe I will. Maybe I will. Now, of course, I have to point out Maya Hawke, who plays Robin, and honestly, she does such a good job. And personally, I feel like Robin is a character I can just heavily relate to with her energy and the way she's kind of a yapper and maybe overtalks sometimes or talks too fast because, like, me too, queen. And how sometimes with, like, her tone, she's not perceived the way she wants to be perceived. So I've liked Robin since she first appeared on the show, and as the show's gone on more and more, I've just loved her more and more and more and related to her harder. So I love Robin. No one be mean to Robin. I also love getting to see some new pairings we haven't got to see before, like Will and Robin together or Nancy and Mike together, because I feel like we haven't really seen Nancy and Mike together so much. Even though they are, you know, siblings, they've not done a lot together. So it's nice to get to see, you know, these siblings working together to try to save their little sibling. I think that's a fun new dynamic that we get to see this season that we've not gotten to see before. So I know we've had to wait like over 3 years since the end of season 4 to get our, you know, finale season. Of course, some of these delays were due to COVID. They had to shut down, you know, filming, and then because of the shutdown, some rewrites had to happen because the actors were all aging up, and so things had to be completely switched from their original plan. So really, I'm just glad that it came back, and it's just as impressive as it's always been. From the costumes to sets to the effects, Stranger Things just goes all out, and each pair of episodes feels like a movie at this point, you know? Like watching up like the first 2 episodes, it felt like that alone could just be a standalone movie. They're so good. I think it's just such a cool universe. Like, I just think everything in Stranger Things is so well thought out and so interesting, and I'll just never get tired of it. Watching the start of season 5, I personally believe it was well worth the wait because everything has been so well done so far. Next time, I'm going to come back to cover chapters 3 and 4 of season 5, volume 1. So if you enjoyed this little recap video, please give it a thumbs up. Comment below what your favorite part of, you know, chapters 1 and 2 were, or who your favorite character is, or even fun facts about the show, or just, you know, whatever you want to comment about. I'll try to respond to literally everything, y'all. I just want to talk about Stranger Things. Well, catch you next time, and this is Rockin' Rad, signing off. So, no thoughts at empty.